Welcome to DM of the Mists, covering all things Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft. Ravenloft The Horrors Within is out now, and in this video I wanted to look at the new versions of the stat blocks for Ezmerelda Davonair, also known as Ez for short, Dr. Rudolph van Richten, and Madam Eva. For someone running Curse of Strahd with the 5.5e rules and monster stat blocks, you may want to use these instead, which is why I wanted to cover them. And if it's interesting you missed it, I also did a video where I said, do you need, or should you get, Ravenloft The Horrors Within if you are running or thinking of running Curse of Strahd, so you might want to check that out as well. And I'm going to dive right in, starting with Ez. So a year or so ago I did a video about Ez, sort of like an NPC deep dive video, where I talked about lore for her, where you can find more information for her, how to roleplay her potentially, what happened in my campaign, and I also talked about her stat block and how to run her in combat. Because her old stat block is really cool. It's one of my favorite stat blocks. It's really varied. She's got a strong offense, both in terms of weapons and magic. She's got some great support abilities. She's got a strong defense, and she's just really versatile. And of course, so when there was a new Ez stat block, I wanted to have a look. I'm going to start off by talking about her old stat block. And then I'll talk about the new one and talk about differences. So her old stat block had some good stats and skills. She had special equipment, so she also had things like potions of greater healing and vials of holy water. Her spell list was pretty decent. She could cast up to 4th level spells and was a 7th level spellcaster, so her cantrips would do 2 dice damage. Firebolt would do 2d10. Her multi-attack was awesome, but it was quite complicated with a weapon. She had 3 weapons, make 2 attacks with 1 weapon, and then potentially different attacks with one of the other weapons. And I talk about scenarios where she'd be smart enough to know, oh, I'll use this weapon if it's this kind of monster, and the other weapon if it's another kind of monster. She also had some Vistani abilities such as Curse and Evil Eye. Comparatively, looking at the new stat block, she has a lower AC. So her old AC was 17, which is pretty high. It's now 14. She has a higher initiative. There's a +7 now, where it was a +4. Her HP's been increased. It was 82. It's now 120. She's got the same constitution bonus, but she's got more hit dice now, hence the increase. Her stats are the same, except she's got a higher intelligence now, which works out to a +4 bonus instead of a +3. And she's proficient in dex saves now, as well as wisdom. Previously, it was just wisdom. She has fewer skill proficiencies. She had a lot, to be fair. She has a lower passive perception, but then she has the same languages, same challenge rating, same proficiency bonus. She no longer has a special equipment, but if you're running Curse of Strahd, I'd probably say she maybe has those. And the attack changes. It's a lot less complicated. She has just 1 weapon now that does extra radiant damage, and she has a ranged attack called Fiery Bolt, which is kind of, I guess, like her swapping out her Firebolt. But the interesting thing here is Firebolt was a cantrip she could use once. Now she can do Fiery Bolt 3 times, and it hits harder as well. There's big changes to her spells. This is kind of like a common 5.5e 2024 rules thing where they simplified the stat blocks. So instead of having spells and spell slots like a player character would, it's just a few that are like, you can cast this once a day or twice a day. So she has Light and Mage Hand as cantrips, and Dispel Evil and Good, that's new. Lightning Bolt and Magic Circle she can cast once a day. Plus, she's also got Shield. That's listed separately in her reactions. She can do that 3 times a day. So she can bump up that 14 AC to 19 if needed. So she's lost quite a few. She's lost Protection from Evil and Good, Dark Vision, Mirror Image, Greater Invisibility, and a few others. I remember in that old video I talked about how her defense, by casting things like Mirror Image and Greater Invisibility, and her already high AC and the fact she can cast Shield as a reaction makes her very difficult to hit with regular attacks. And she can only cast a bunch of those spells once, rather than the fact that she previously had 10 spell slots. Curse of the All-Seeing Eye is similar to her old curse, but it can be reactivated once the target is killed. So she can use it more than once a day, despite it saying it's a once a day ability, but it's only active on one target at a time. So it's essentially lost till the next day if the target gets away, potentially, or uses Remove Curse, or the battle ends without them being killed, that kind of thing. I talked about an example or two of this in the previous video, and I think in another video as well, but imagine she uses piercing damage as the vulnerability, so she can grant a vulnerability of a chosen damage type. And I think it overrides, because the wording basically says that person's now vulnerable to this type of damage. You imagine like an undead that's immune to poison, they're now vulnerable to poison. Probably a bad example, but hopefully that makes sense. There's nothing in there to say, if they're already immune to it, it doesn't work. I think it just happens. Be curious to get other DM's thoughts on that, actually. Please leave a comment if you have a different opinion on that or if you agree. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, imagine she does piercing damage and you've got a rogue with a dagger or a bow and arrow, a crossbow or a short sword, or other melee fighters with those kinds of weapons. That could be absolutely devastating. Could be brilliant tactically. She's lost Evil Eye, which in 5.5e is just Hold Person. In the old rules, it was Animal Friendship Charm Person as well. And she's got 2 new bonus actions alongside Curse of the All-Seeing Eye. Bolster allies, she can choose up to 6 allies within 60 feet. And one of 2 things can happen. They can either have advantage on the next attack roll before the end of its next turn, or resistance to acid, necrotic, and poison damage until the end of its next turn. That's great. Imagine using the second ability, resistance to necrotic damage, in a situation where you're surrounded by vampire spawn. I'm thinking the coffin shop in Vallaki in Curse of Strahd. That could be a game changer and really help to save the PCs. An Inspiring Rally. 6 allies within 60 feet again. Each target that can hear her can take a reaction to move up to its speed without provoking opportunity attacks. So that's good as well. So my verdict is, it's still a cool stat block. It's a very interesting NPC stat block as NPCs go. And she's kind of, with those new bolstering and rallying abilities, she kind of makes for a good leader NPC almost. You know, rallying the troops and inspiring them. It is quite OP though. And there's the risk that it'll overshadow the players. I think that was a risk of the previous stat block. I'd argue it's probably even more so now with the fact that her attacks do more damage. She can do 3 ranged attacks instead of 1, essentially. That said, things like bolster allies might make the players happy. You know, she's giving them auto advantage on the next attack they do. That's great. Players love that kind of thing. But then is the risk then that she makes the game too easy. If she's the fated ally in Curse of Strahd, for example, and then every battle they have, she can just keep doing that. I don't think there's anything, I'm looking at it now, I don't think there's anything that says that it's it's limited use. I think she can just use it every single round. I see Ez as a potentially good tier 3, tier 4 ally, more than necessary in Curse of Strahd, by which I mean in Curse of Strahd she's overpowered, not to say that she's not a good ally. What I mean here is, because she's got the higher HP and she can do this extra stuff, I think she'd be good sort of if you're doing a post-Curse of Strahd wider Ravenloft campaign like I'm doing. I finished Curse of Strahd a few years ago and I've been doing other Domains of Dread since. In my game, they recruited Jennifer Weathermay Foxgrove, one of the Weathermay Foxgrove twins, as an ally who travels around with them. And the stat block I used, she's got about 50 HP, but they're like level 15 now. And I think the one with the lowest HP, it's like the wizard who used Con as their dump stat, has more than that. So there's a risk if there's a big attack, their NPC ally is the one who's going to drop, which I can see that kind of being really annoying to players and burdening them, thinking, oh God, we got to heal her again. So Ez with her high HP fits in better thinking of that. Point of 5.5e was to simplify stat blocks, especially spellcasters, and arguably they've done this with Ez. But I'd argue that the kind of complicated other elements of it, the fact that she's got 3 bonus actions, one of which can do 2 different things, and the fact that one bonus action may or may not come back depending on the circumstances. So how would I run her now in combat? Well, for her action, she's got her various attacks. And her bonus action, she's obviously got a few choices. If the PCs are fighting a solo or boss enemy, maybe use Curse first to get the vulnerability, then move on to the others. If it's a group, she could bolster allies, like I said earlier, necrotic damage, resistance against vampire spawn or other enemies that do big dealings of necrotic damage. Or Aspiring Rally if they need to retreat or better reorganize the troops, move the PCs around. I'm thinking in situations where the group aren't in marching order and maybe they're exploring somewhere, they split up a little bit and combat triggers unexpectedly. Well, she can do that to kind of let them move, get the tanks at the front, get the weaker party members behind the front line, stuff like that. Moving on to Rudolph van Richten, or as this stat block is called in Curse of Strahd, Rictavio. Spoiler alert for Curse of Strahd. You shouldn't be watching this if you're a player of Curse of Strahd. I should have warned earlier, sorry. So again, I did a video about Van Richten, VR as I call him for short sometimes, talking about who he is and what happened in my campaign, role-playing him and his stat block. It's less complicated than Ez's stat block, both this new one and the old one, so I didn't cover combat too heavily in that, mostly because he's not really a frontline fighter, as I'll talk about in a minute. The old stat block, decent HP, but quite weak otherwise. He's got low AC and a low damage output. So I argued in my other video that he's more of a support role, and his knowledge of monsters is where he's handy. You're in a battle with him and he's like, ah, that's a ghoul. Ghouls do these things. They're weak against these things. Watch out for this attack, so on and so on. He had special equipment, including a ring of mind shielding, which is quite important because that grants him other benefits that I don't think are listed in the stat block. For instance, the whole thing about how people can't read his thoughts. Well, if you remember he's got the ring and remember the ring does that, that's handy, but they could have just added it to the stat block and says, while he's wearing his ring, these things you need to remember. He had a bunch of spells, mostly support and healing spells. His Undead Slayer ability was cool, so if he hits an undead with a weapon attack, they take extra damage, and quite considerable, 3d6, whereas his regular attack is just 1d6 plus 1. He could multi-attack twice, and there were two aspects of his weapon, depending on whether his sword cane is sheathed or not, either piercing or bludgeoning damage. But he had no ranged attacks. Yeah, I would have thought they'd give him something like Sacred Flame because of, cleric cantrip. He's got cleric spells. I gave him a crossbow because I think he had access to one in his wagon, if memory serves. But yeah, no range attacks otherwise if you're just running it raw. The new stat block. Slightly higher AC. It's 13 now. It was 12 previously. That's probably due to his boost in dex. Same with the initiative. It's gone up by 1. He has 105 HP now. Previously it was 77. I think that's due to the boost in his con stat. And speaking of stats, his strength is the same. His dex is up 2. His con is up 3. His intelligence up 1. Wiz is the same, and charisma's down 1. So it's mostly the same, just with a few minor tweaks, although you've been given a much bigger boost in con. Same saving throw proficiencies as before. Similar skills, although insight is gone, but the others are the same. He's got the same passive perception, languages, challenge racing, proficiency bonus. He no longer has that special equipment, but that makes sense because that was kind of unique to Curse of Strahd. If you're running Curse of Strahd and using this stat block, I'd suggest giving them to him, especially the Ring of Mind Shielding. Shield of Erasmus, I really like the flavour here. While bloodied I believe means less than half HP. He has resistance to force, poison, and psychic damage. For those of you who don't know, Erasmus is his son who died and is now a ghost. And if I remember correctly, I think the lore for the Horrors Within suggests he travels around with him, which I think it kind of said in Van Richten's guide, I think, but, it isn't in Curse of Strahd, because those came out after Curse of Strahd. I can see the resistance to force and psychic damage being good if he's fighting incorporeal undead, or some of the new cosmic horror monsters in the book. Multi-attack is 3 attacks now, not 2. He still has his silver sword cane, but instead of piercing or bludgeoning damage, it now only does slashing damage plus radiant. And if he hits somebody with a crit, the target is poisoned until their next long rest, or they can roll an hourly con save to try and shake it off sooner. That's really handy. His hand crossbow can be fired 3 times, which seems odd given it's a loading weapon. Maybe flavor it as like a cool customized version of a crossbow. I've got a vague memory. It's been a few years since I watched it, and I don't think I even watched it to the end. But the Van Helsing movie, didn't he have a crossbow in that could sort of fire quicker rounds? Be interesting to know if the designers of this stat block, if it was an oversight, or if that's actually what they were going for. And it's good it's in a stat block, because I felt it was missing in Curse of Strahd, especially because he had access to one in his wagon. And the crossbow also does radiant damage. He's lost Undead Slayer, but other damage makes up for it, which is not limited to just undead. Repel Evil is a recharge bonus action, where a 30-foot cone from him, and he can choose which creatures are affected, so he can choose it to not affect allies. They take 4d8 psychic damage, and they are frightened until the end of his next turn, or just half damage only if they succeed on the saving throw. Charisma saving throw. So that's good. It's like, instead of turn undead, it's turn everything. Well, except for obviously things that are immune to being frightened, but still, they at least take the big chunk of psychic damage. And he's got a bonus action called Occult Aid, where he has access to Cure Wounds, Dispel Evil and Good, and Sanctuary, where he can cast those twice. Not twice each, sorry. He can cast, from those 3 spells, he can cast twice. So you can cast Cure Wounds twice, or the other 2 once each, that kind of thing. Kind of handy to have Cure Wounds as a bonus action spell. So, you can attack and heal someone in the same turn, or repel evil and heal someone in the same turn. I think that's really handy. My verdict: the damage output is higher, more attacks, extra radiant damage. It's mostly the same as before. He's a support person with healing spells, other spells, and more support type abilities. But I still like the stat block. It's cool and unique, like the previous one was. How I'd run him now? Similar to before. He's not a frontline fighter, so there's more reliance on crossbow than the sword. Repel Evil is handy to have against a group of enemies, and you could use that as much as possible, I think. Every time it's available with a d6 recharge, I can see him just using it straight away. He's got healing if needed, twice a day. And I'd argue, and I said this in the previous video, when I did a video all about him, His knowledge of monsters, you don't even need to roll. He sees a monster and in the middle of battle on his turn, he's shouting, this is its weaknesses, this is what we should do, kind of thing. And last but not least, Madam Eva. I always found Madam Eva having a stat block really cool, but also weirdly unnecessary. I can't see many campaigns where it's needed. I did do a video where there was a Curse of Strahd infographic posted in the Curse of Strahd subreddit a few years ago. I did a video kind of going through it all and giving my thoughts. And on that, there was a breakdown of when people were polled, like which NPCs died in your campaign. And Madam Eva was the least likely to die in only 2% of campaigns. So presumably only 1 in 50 groups have combat where she dies. Maybe there's more where there's combat but she isn't killed. But that's not many DMs getting a chance to use that stat block, I don't think. Did your group fight, Eva? And did you use a stat block? Let me know if so. I'd be curious to know how it went. We've not done a Madam Eva video before, unlike Ez and VR. I did consider doing one before The Horrors Within came out. So I'm doing a deep dive of both stat blocks, which are kind of both new to me because I never really needed it in Curse of Strahd, so I never really paid it much attention. By the way, I have a bad habit of fluctuating between pronunciations. Sometimes I say Madam Eva, sometimes I say Madam Eva. It was funny, in the Black Dice Society actual play, which I did a video about, kind of an overview, and here's the flavor you can use. They go to Barovia, by the way, if you want to watch it for the Curse of Strahd side of things. And there was one episode where Madam Eva is introduced, and the DM is like, her name is Madam Eva. Madam Eva. And if anyone says it any differently, they're saying it wrong. And then he proceeded to spend the rest of the video mispronouncing Ismark's name. So I was like, okay then. So apparently, officially, it's Madam Eva, but I'm saying Eva. Eva. I say Eva. The old stat block, very low AC, just 10. High HP, 88. She has a 20-foot speed, probably because she's an old lady. Technically, she's a super old lady. And she has high intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Passive perception of 19. Wow. And challenge rating 10. Her spells, she's a 16th level spellcaster, so she's 1 level away from cantrips doing 4 damage dice. Hers do 3. She's got a wild list of spells up to 8th level, including Spirit Guardians, Firestorm, and Earthquake. But also things like Raise Dead, Greater Restoration, and Regenerate, so a lot of sort of healing and support type spells, as well as destructive ones. She has a dagger, which I can probably never see her needing to use. And she can do, her version of the Vistani curse is she can cause the blinded and deafened conditions. And Evil Eye, same as Vistani in general and the old version of Ez. I kind of see her as the D&D version of Yoda. She seems weak and frail, but if combat does happen, she is deceivingly destructive. And now the new stat block. She's got much higher AC, it's 15 now, it was 10. Higher initiative, +4 now, it was 0. Higher HP, 117 instead of 88. And his speed is now 30, which I'd argue is kind of good because it's just kind of weird and annoying when you've got I'm so used to everyone having 30 speed, especially humanoid type characters, that it's confusing weird if they don't. She has the same stats, except her constitution's a bit higher. It's just the same skills except deception and intimidation have been removed. Same passive perception, same languages, same challenge rating, same proficiency bonus. She's got magic resistance, which makes sense. It's the whole advantage against magical attacks and spells. Her multi-attack is 3 attacks. Cursed Dagger does piercing and necrotic damage. Radiant Flame is ranged and does radiant damage and causes the blinding condition. And it's automatic, there's no saving throw. So you get hit and you're blinded. Apocalyptic Visions does big necrotic and psychic damage combo plus the frightened condition. Her spells are just down to Dispel Magic and Remove Curse twice a day, and then Greater Restoration, Raise Dead, Scrying, and Spirit Guardians at 8th level once a day. So she's down a lot of spells and spell slots. Bonus action Evil Eye, so just hold person, no charm, personal, and friendship, but she can do that twice a day. She's lost Curse, and Evil Eye has been reduced, essentially. Verdict, it's a solid stat block, but I can't see a scenario where it's used, because I doubt she'd become an enemy. And if it's a situation where she's an ally, a scenario could be it's a Vistani camp that's under attack from monsters. She's very OP, plus there'll probably be other Vistani around. I doubt she'd be on her own. It's a good way to show off as powerful, though. So if the players are kind of thinking, should we take this Taroka card reading from this old woman seriously? There's an attack, and then she's doing these huge destructive attacks on the enemies, then they'll be like, yeah, we should probably take her seriously. I had plans to show off the stat block in my post-Curse of Strahd game. So they didn't do this during Curse of Strahd, but after Curse of Strahd, they returned to Barovia, and that's when they went to the Amber Temple with Casimir and helped Casimir resurrect Petrina. And in the background, and they sort of know bits and bobs about this, Petrina and all the Dusk Elves have moved into Castle Ravenloft, and she's setting herself up to be the future Countess. It does say somewhere buried away in the Curse of Strahd book that her dream is to become a vampire. So what I'm thinking of having happen at one point when they come back to their base in Barovia after Domains of Dread, they're wandering around at the moment, they're in the Shadowlands, is that she sends them an invitation to her coronation, where she plans to trigger the vampire gift from the Amber Temple. She will kill Casimir and let the other Dusk Elves try and kill her. And I planned for her that she would invite the burgomasters from different places. So Ismark from the village of Barovia, the Kreskovs from Kresk. Vallaki has a council now, which is led by not Fiona Wachter. Who's the other one? The Baroness, Lydia. So they're going to be there, and it's going to be chaos. But I also planned for Madam Eva to be there, and I just thought it'd be really cool if they're like, right, we need to help get everyone out because, you know, Petrina's casting fireball on people, that she is basically like, no, I'll handle this, and just as Spirit Guardians at 8th level or something. So that was my plans, to use her at some point so they get to see her Yoda-like super strong abilities and think, oh, okay, actually, she's really tough. And then I get to show off and use a new stat block as well, which is always fun. How I'd run her new stat block? Well, Apocalyptic Visions, she'd use that when possible. She would cast 8th level Spirit Guardians early if Apocalyptic Visions is recharging. And then Radiant Flame as much as possible to blind people, especially people who rely on sight for their attacks or their abilities. They'd probably be her chosen targets. Have you got a good scenario for including Eva in a way that is satisfying combat-wise? Let me know in the comments, because I'd love to hear your stories or suggestions. That's it for this one. So my next Curse of Strahd video is likely to be an analysis of the brand new Strahd stat block in The Horrors Within. I've seen some chatter online. Some people think it's terrible. Some people are like, it's weaker. Well, yeah, I guess so. And I'm going to talk about whether you could still use things like the Heart of the Sorrow and the old layer actions with it. I think there might be a bit of a conflict with the new rules and what's happened with layer actions in 2024 5.5e. So we'll see. I'll do my thoughts in that video coming soon. I'm still doing various other The Horrors Within videos via the other videos I do. The other side of my videos is Ravenloft videos. I'm going to do a part 2 of the new monsters. I've already done a part 1. That was my previous video. I'm going to do a video where I try and do some Taroka readings as suggested from the book and sort of help DMs with that if you're wanting to run just like a random Taroka reading in a Ravenloft campaign. And I got a few more ideas as well. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want to support me, I've got a membership. It's a bit like Patreon, but it's YouTube something. You can get access to videos early. I do some shorter, smaller sort of behind the scenes videos. You can get discounts on my DMs Guild resources. I'm going to do more tiers and perks in the future where I can help Curse of Strahd Ravenloft DMs with their campaigns in varying degrees, shout outs in videos and things like that. So keep an eye out for that. I'm going to do that soon. We'll leave it there. Thanks for watching.